Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I'm doing the unthinkable. Going live twice in one day. It's not the done thing, but I've got a little desire to jump on and to post some content. I wanted to look through some videos. I put this off for a little while, but I wanted to look at some of the more viewed debunking videos. And so today we will be looking at this question here. Can preterism be debunked? That was such a popular word 20 years ago. Everything was being debunked. But, you know, I'm curious. I'm keen to see what the arguments are. So without any delay, let's jump right into it. You can see I've got a little video lined up over here. Let's find out what they're going to say. I'll just change it so I can get a good proper view.
I can't believe I have to make this video, but there are people on this app that are misleading people, so I have to. There's a group of people on this app that actually believe that in 70 AD, everything was fulfilled, and now we live in a new heaven and earth, which is insane to even think about. Because if that was even true, why would the world be like it is right now? But if you studied the early church fathers' works, then you would see that they were still looking for Jesus's return. So if it happened in 70 AD, then they missed it somehow. These people are called preterists, and they believe that all the end time events were spiritual, which really is just a Gnostic view. Many of these people pervert the gospel and deny a future bodily resurrection of the saints. But in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 13, Paul says, "For if there is no resurrection of the dead, then Christ has not been raised either." He also stated that we're going to have imperishable bodies once Christ appears. So to think otherwise distorts the gospel of hope to believers. Paul also says in 2 Timothy chapter 2, "Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. But avoid irrelevant babble, for it will lead people into more and more ungodliness, and their talk will spread like gangrene. Among them are Hymenaeus and Philetus, who have swerved from the truth, saying that the resurrection..."
Is she about to call us a Hymenaeus and Philetus? Because that is beyond the pale, madam.
Has already happened. They are upsetting the faith of some. So Paul already warned us that these people would come and say that this resurrection had already happened, but it hasn't. Their theory is...
Dude, we're 2,000 years after those people. All the people who the resurrection promises were made to are dead. So what's the point making it to them? You know what I mean? Oh, everybody be watchful and be careful and be considerate. And, you know, Jesus telling the saints through John, the seven churches, you know, be mindful. I'll preserve you through that tribulation. See him coming quickly. It's like, we're so far beyond the pale. You know, I can't listen to this whole thing without... I'm just going to do it point by point.
It's insane to even think about. Because if that was even true, why would the world be like it is right now? But if you studied the early church fathers' works, then you would see...
So this is an okay point that she's making. I understand that. So this gets this banner here. That made me think. Because she's right. The early church fathers do speak as if nothing transformative, nothing transcendent happened. Nothing. Just, you know, the world kept on spinning. There was no event. There was no great change. We're still waiting for Christ to return after 70 AD. So it's one to make people think, isn't it? It's one to make people think. Give her it.
That they were still looking for Jesus's return. So if it happened in 70 AD, then they missed it somehow?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. You know, how did they miss it? And it's one that I've addressed numerous times on the channel. And if I have to give a quick response to that, it would be that the early church fathers, who they purport themselves to be, these maintenance keepers, these, you know, I mean, these people who are trying to maintain the faith throughout the ages and continue it forward, I think they're disorientated. I'm using that word a lot, aren't I? But they are. They were disorientated, the early church fathers. And the early church fathers are not, you know, by their remembrance in history, somehow the greatest authority. Man, where am I going with this? What I mean to say is there's people whose names we do not know, names we will never speak, who lived during those days. And some of them would have been chastised, and some of them would have just lived quiet lives. And those were the real champions. Because that's what the scripture teaches us, right? It doesn't teach us that he who is first shall be super extra first, and he who is last shall be just kicked down a couple more steps. Although there is a parable of the ones who invest their money. He who is faithful. Oh, but that's the kind of content, isn't it? He who is faithful with a little shall be entrusted with a lot. And the general kind of takeaway I get from scripture is that inversion, or that just that mystery of God who elevates the humble. You know, the tax collector who beats his chest and says, I am a sinner. And that's the one who has the greatest esteem, not the Pharisee who sees themselves as righteous in all their ways. So when we look at the early church fathers, I'm not saying here's a bunch of charlatans. Here's a bunch of Brandon Biggs. He's only joking. I don't know if he's a charlatan. But I think the early church fathers need to be taken with a cup of tea. That's not the expression. Taken with a pinch of salt. Take them with a cup of tea if you want, but take them with a pinch of salt as well. Because while they have great wisdom and things, if you actually read through the works of the early church fathers, they are crazy. You know what I mean? Like, is it Justin Martyr? It's just bonkers. You know what I mean? I mean, you could look at him and say, this guy's he's powerful. He's the Alex Jones of his time, but he's just looking to get killed, man. It's like he sees that as the great honor. Like he's trying to get himself killed. I think that may be an uncharitable way of looking at it, but he definitely esteemed Christ and Peter and Paul and all these saints who had died before. And I feel like he was just trying to get himself into that kind of like in amongst that company. Why am I doing this? Why am I trying to trash Justin Martyr? I'm not going to win that fight, and that's not what I'm doing. But understand that these ideological leanings that people have, they don't necessarily communicate to us what the truth of the matter of the fact is. Yes, the early church fathers did seem to be futurists. They did seem to anticipate a future coming of Christ. But, who these people are, God is not a respecter of persons. And the maintenance of the church throughout history and the way that it's been maintained, I mean, come on, there's so much bloodshed, there's so much persecution, there's so much unholiness and obviously ungodly things happening all the way up to the present day with scandals that would just, it's so horrible. And so, I look at the early church fathers and I see people struggling to make sense of something, coming to terms with them, exercising their faith. But with this disorientation, they don't know what to do with the Christian narrative at that point. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know what they're doing with it other than waiting for Christ to return, which completely goes against all the evidence in the Bible, but we'll go on.
These people are called preterists, and they believe that all the end time events were spiritual.
And look, see what she's saying, they believe all the end time events are spiritual. That's not what we're doing. There might be some people who exist out there who want to be preterists. I am not one of them. I do not want to be a preterist, okay? Like, not in the same way. It's not like I'm trying to support a sports team. It's not like I'm trying to be a Republican or a Democrat. It's not like I'm trying to be this, okay? I'm simply following the truth wherever it leads me. I've got my hands off the wheel. I'm just pumping that accelerator, and I'm just saying, truth take the wheel. I am the way, the truth, and the life. So that's what I'm trying to do. And it's led me down this direction, okay? I'm not team preterist. I don't care. Being a preterist just so happens to be, or rather align with what the truth of the matter is, okay? As far as I'm concerned. And I might be wrong. I'm open to adjustment. again, I'm not trying to pick a team. I'm not trying to be a team. I'm not trying to be the best preterist. I'm trying to be the best that I can be in terms of my relationship with the truth.
Which really is just a Gnostic view. Many of these people.
I mean, that's just someone trying to be dismissive and smear your character by saying, "Oh, it's just a Gnostic truth." But if you look into the Gnostics, like David McMurdo, he looked into the Gnostics and he proved that these people could be very thoughtful and engaging, and they weren't all these monsters with these crazy ideas, you know what I mean, to be vilified and othered. Some of them were actually very spiritual in a very good way, that they led good lives, they were trying to approach God. It's just
Pervert the gospel and deny a future bodily resurrection of the saints.
And this is another thing that these people do, is they change the goalposts, they move the goalposts around with definitions. So they'll say, I don't believe in the future bodily resurrection. Give me a second. Go to bed. Sorry, I just put the dog away. So, yeah, they'll change the goalposts around. They'll say that we don't believe in a bodily resurrection. We don't believe in a resurrection. All these kinds of things. And yeah, it's true that I don't believe in a bodily physical resurrection. But I would suggest that I very, very strongly do believe in a resurrection. I do. I believe in that. 100%. Just, I have a slightly different, not slightly, it's a significantly different conceptualization of that event. But I still believe in that event. So to say that I don't, that's being dishonest. I mean, what's the goal here? Although I will give her right now, she said bodily, so that qualifies it okay.
But in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 13, Paul says, for if there is no resurrection of the dead, then Christ has not been raised.
Yeah, but what does that prove? That says nothing against my perspective. I believe there is a resurrection from the dead, the resurrection of the dead. 100%.
Either. He also stated that we're going to have imperishable bodies once Christ appears.
Yes, imperishable. Okay. Once this tent is put off, right? The tent of this world, there's a house or a home that's not fashioned with human hands. There's all this idea of, the imperishable is invisible. Paul says only unseen things are incorruptible. And if we're going to possess incorruptible bodies, does that not suggest that they should also be unseen? So
I think otherwise distorts the gospel of hope to believers.
It doesn't distort the gospel of hope. I mean, how much more have you robbed people of hope with the message of futurism? It's just a dreary, dreich existence. You're saying that Jesus never had victory. He's forestalled hope. Sorry. What is it? Delay makes the heart sick. No, hope deferred makes the heart sick. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. And indeed, the scriptures are quite aggressively stating in some places, don't say that the Lord is slow. You know what I mean? Like, everything has its proper time.
Paul also says in 2 Timothy chapter 2, do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who has no need to be flawed in so many ways, but I'm going to give you a couple more examples. Acts 24, verse 15 says, having a hope in God, which these men themselves accept, and there will be a resurrection of both the just and the unjust. Right. The preterist view only talks about the just being resurrected. So their view.
No, it doesn't. 100% doesn't. The resurrection applies to everyone. Everyone is made alive in God through Christ's redeeming work. I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's been posited to me that, when was this great white throne judgment? Have we had that yet? Maybe the great white throne judgment's in the future. But I don't think it's in the future at all. I think it's a moment that happened historically and trans-historically. Like it's this point in time that echoes out, it pushes backwards, it pushes forwards, it transcends. And so everyone is born alive in the spirit, and they can choose to disobey God and go down dark paths and produce, a lot of wickedness. However, everyone has access to life now. Everyone can have relationship and oneness with God. It's just their desire to embrace that. The kingdom of heaven is within. It's not somewhere that you should say, look over here or look over there. It doesn't come with observation, and yet it has come. But these are the people who are looking for it with observation. These are the people that say that Paul's a liar. When Paul says our salvation draws closer than we first believe, they call Paul a liar. These are the people that call John a liar. It is the last hour. Little children, we know it's the last hour. They call Peter a liar. They call him a liar because in Luke 21:8, is it? I made a YouTube short about this. The scripture where Jesus says, do not follow people who say the time is near when it isn't. Do not follow people who say the time is near when it's not. That is so significant. Why does nobody talk about that? Why does nobody zero in on that in the futurist camp? And so that makes everyone a liar. But I don't think that. I believe them.
You contradicts what Acts says in that verse. Matthew chapter 22, verse 29 says, but Jesus answered them, you are wrong because you know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. Christ charged the ones who denied the resurrection of the body as ignorant. The Bible talks about a final day of judgment.
We didn't.
Preterists limit this to the destruction of this temple in 70 AD. But the devastation of 70 AD only happened to...
It's not just the destruction of the temple, it's that whole paradigm. It's that whole paradigm of covenant, which has, spiritual significance, obviously.
The Jews, and only affected them. But in Acts 17...
No, I don't think it only affected the Jews. I know there's a lot of people in the Israel-only camp, and they try to suggest that it only impacts Jews. But I think that's an atheistic, and the people that I see who subscribe to Israel-only, some of them are prominent voices on the YouTube, on the Facebook group, are atheists. Because in order to be Israel-only, you need to imagine a reality in which God has no relationship at all with any other created being other than an Israeli from from before, in ancient antiquity and before. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense, because there was always people outside of Israel who had relationship with God. Melchizedek and Cyrus the Great. And, there's numerous characters. The Israel-only people define Gentile as Jews who have strayed, right? The diaspora, sorry. So, yeah.
It says, because he has fixed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed. And of this he has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead. But in Matthew chapter 12, verse 41, we see the men of Nineveh will also be there, and they clearly weren't there in 70 AD.
They clearly weren't there in 70 AD. I mean, you're approaching this with a hyper-literalist perspective. This is like listening to Nicodemus. Shall I enter into my mother a second time to be born again? That's what we're getting from this person here. Jesus said that as the lightning flashes from the east to the west, so it shall be when he comes. Every eye will see him. But then when Jesus ascends in Acts 1:11 into the heavens, there's only a handful of people that see him ascend. And the angel says, as you saw him go, so he shall return. And you think, well, what does that mean exactly? Because we get these two competing ideas. In what manner is he coming and going? Are we speaking about something else other than the logistics? Are we speaking about the glory with which he's coming? Are we speaking about something like that? Or are we just talking about he's going to be floating on a stratocumulus cloud?
When Paul defended his case in front of the Roman governor Felix of the judgment to come, Felix was terrified. Acts chapter 24, verse 25. And as he reasoned about righteousness and self-control in the coming judgment, Felix was alarmed and said, "Go away for the present. When I get an opportunity, I will summon you." Why would a Roman be afraid of an impending destruction of Judaism when he's on the winning side? According to the preterist view, the end of the world is 25. And as he reasoned about righteousness and self-control in the coming judgment, Felix was alarmed and said, "Go away for the present. When I get an opportunity, I will summon you." Why would a Roman be afraid of an impending destruction of Judaism?
Well, you're assuming he's afraid. You don't know that he's afraid. You could just be like, "Go away, you're talking a lot of nonsense." So we don't know that he has any fear. And also, the reason he'd be afraid is because there's a God that's maneuvering society outside of the control of the government, which I'm sure back then the Caesar had some kind of divine concept attached to it. So you'd be like almost a god emperor. So the idea that there's a god that's maneuvering society, that could be quite a frightening thing. And in the way that that judgment might play out, that's going to cause disruption to the Roman state, or to the Roman Empire, rather. Yes, especially as it controls Israel.
When he's on the winning side. According to the preterist view, the end of the world is just limited to the Jewish world, not the entire world, which occurred in...
And again, it's about that covenant reality. You could say it's about the Jewish world, but that's a very shallow way of looking at it. It's the world of covenant that's of that age, It's like it's the end of the world for everyone, and that relationship with God opened up, blossomed, at least in the narrative that we're reading. Who knows what the big metaphysical reality is in the spirit realms? We're not privy to that. But as far as the narrative goes, God had covenant with the Jewish people. And even she agrees as a futurist. She's acting all incredulous about this, but that's your belief too, right? That God had a covenant people. That's your belief. That is a shared belief that we have. And then this opened up and expanded to everyone. We're completely aligned in these beliefs. You just undermine the significance of the new covenant, whereas I see the victory of it, the covenant without end.
70 AD. But this view is simply not viable if you read the Bible. See, we as believers have a responsibility of the Great Commission, which is to teach and immerse lost souls. So if the end of the world occurred in 70 AD, then the Lord's commission is no longer valid.
Yes and no. Paul said that the work was complete. Paul said that he'd preached to every creature under heaven, that he'd preached across the corners of the earth, that everyone had heard the gospel, basically. So Paul preached that the gospel had went out, and we know that when that was supposed to have been complete, that the end would come. Well, there you have it in scripture. Chapter and verse. I didn't commit that to memory, but I've made videos if you look through my history, and you can find that and pull that up. So she is, she's trying hard. She's making some points that makes me think, but I'm not convinced.
Which is absolutely absurd. Also, Jesus talked about the parable of the tares, where in the end of the world, the tares, the evil ones, would be removed from the kingdom and burned. Did that transpire with the destruction of 70 AD? No. If you read the Old Testament, then you can see clearly that Jesus' first coming was literal, and so will his second coming be as well. The New Testament reveals the fulfillment of this prophecy, and it clarifies our hope in Jesus and for his appearing for his church, as well as our hope for all eternity. Christ did not leave his church without a hope-filled vision of the future for the past 2,000 years. Much of the biblical prophecy...
Oh, didn't he? I mean, tell us more. Tell us more about your perspective there, because we live in the same world, and it's just a matter of perspective. In my world, God, Christ, the whole kingdom has been within us and all the good that we do. In her world, I mean, what is she appealing to then? Oh, preterist, are you saying we've been left alone for 2,000 years? Not at all. John 17, that oneness. As you and I are one, may they also be one with us. That's what I'm believing. What is she appealing to suggest that Jesus hasn't left, people alone for 2,000 years? Is she talking about the Pope, the papacy? Am I saying that right? Papacy? Papacy? I'm sure it's a word. Is that what she's appealing to?
Awaits a future fulfillment. I hope this opens some of y'all's eyes and keeps you in hopes for a future appearance of our Lord and Savior, because he's coming soon for his church.
Oh, really? Is he coming soon, huh? Well, when we heard that in the 1st century, that Jesus was coming quickly, that meant 2,000 years. So when you tell me that Jesus is coming soon, do you mean the year 4000? Is that how I should understand you? Because that would be the precedent that was set. A mic drop, a skadoosh. Okay, I think we've done that. And you know what I'm going to do, guys? I'm going to go straight in here and hit it up with to be honest, pal, I find that unconvincing. I hate to do that, guys. I hate to drop that on her. She seems like a nice lady, but that's where we are. So I'm going to come back into the chat now. We get David and saying cheers to you from California. Brother William, always glad to see you on. Thank you very much. It's really nice to hear from you, and especially just to think on California, Californian sunsets. Hello, Willie. Hello, David. Hello there, Lady Cymbeline. Here we go. I love my early church fathers, bold and steeped well. Oh, no. So you listened to that whole tirade I had against them. All the joking. I think they're great. There's a lot of wisdom there. No harm, no foul. All right. We love the early church fathers over here. We're all about the early church fathers. In fact, I was just talking about how great the early church fathers were. Okay. Keith Wilson, please keep my health in your prayers. Absolutely, Keith. We'll do that. We'll do that. If someone wants to lead a prayer, then we can maybe do that as well. I just mentioned in a previous video that I sometimes find it a bit to pray on camera, but I would be willing to do it for anyone here if they wanted me to. Yes. Papacy, thank you, papacy. Although maybe that's an American pronunciation, maybe the British pronunciation is different. Oh no, this guy's going to do a real quick 32-minute video, so we're not going to listen to that. We'll skip through it, right? Whoa, dude, what the fuck? Like, why is he coming at me like that? You know what I mean? Sorry, you never got to see that video. Hold on. I need to press a little button. Wait till you see this guy. This guy is just absolutely mocking me right here. Hold on. I don't know. Look at his face. He's like those assholes. You're gonna listen to those guys. Oh my goodness, this guy is firing on all pistons. Okay, this guy's giving it both barrels. Wow, I love him. I actually do. I think this guy's great. Let's see where he goes. Yes. I love this guy. Take a minute to digest that. Take a minute. They think it happened in the first century. Slick. A devils. This guy's amazing. Okay. I've dealt with them like what a, I don't know, some kind of subspecies. You know what I mean? They like to inhabit cold, moist areas. You might want to check your crawl space. There might be a preterist in there. This is where they'll take you. They'll take you to Matthew 24 into the crawl space. They'll find a nice little damp bit of moss. You gotta watch out, man. Yeah, dude. Yeah. Because Jesus said, there are some standing here who shall not taste death until the Son of Man comes with his kingdom. Okay, what does that mean? You will not finish going through the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. All the righteous bloodshed in the earth, from Abel to Zedekiah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar, will come upon this generation. Will be avenged upon them. How long, O Lord, holy and true, till we are avenged? It says in Revelation. Wait a little while, just a little while longer. Till the measure of their bloodshed has been filled up. Well, when did the measure of the blood be? When was that filled? Matthew 23 tells us it'd be filled up and avenged in that generation, upon that generation. Come on. Yep, that's right. Okay, you understand then. Yep. There you go. There you go, man. There you go. You just read it. Yeah, man. Yes. Yeah. That's right. That's right, man. Oh man, don't even bother because we're not listening to this guy much longer. I'll skip to the middle, skip to the end to get the flavor. But all this guy's doing is reading the truth incredulously with that incredulous mocking tone and then having these nothing responses to it. Let's see where he heats himself up to. Dude, is he trying to say that preterism is some kind of deception to get your eyes off of Christ? Because the whole preterist conception is that we are one with Christ, one with God, that Christ is alive inside of us. It's the most intimate and close relationship that you could possibly have. That's the message that we are advancing. And even if you think that logistically or theologically that sounds wrong, well, morally, spiritually, lovingly, to be perfect as the Heavenly Father is perfect, on that kind of metric, it's not wrong. You might not agree with the words, but the actions, the intent, the life that's led by that kind of information, it's the fruit of the Spirit. We'll skip to the end now to see what he kind of concludes. I can tell he loves that book because he has that book about 1,000 times behind him. But that's cool, man. It's nice to have that. If you love that book, more power to you. I would suggest that you might want to love Jesus more than you love that book. You pathetic. On a joke, and we don't do that here. But yeah, I think he's got a little bit of idolatry going on, and I think he's. Oh no, did I lose my audio? Your browser has lost connection to screen share audio. Try sharing your screen again. Restart the browser if this happens. Oh no. I'll just kind of stop that and then I'll start again in a minute. Okay. Let's go back to some of the comments here, guys. Oh no, there was no sound for that whole thing. All right, I'll get the sound sorted. But yeah, that guy was, I forget what was his channel called. The easiest way to debunk a preterist by Born Again Barbarian. Oh, that would explain the swords that he has up in the background. Let me see here. So if I go back to presenting my screen, if I go to share screen, if I jump back to share screen, I might not keep this one up if it's going to be a bit cray-cray. Let's see, the easiest way to debunk a preterist, share screen. So this guy here.
I dedicate my life to this book, this King James Bible. And what the Lord's shown me about it right now is an amazing blessing. It just gives me chills. I've never seen this stuff before. It's incredible.
Okay, I think the audio is working again, but I don't know what he's referring to there that's incredible, because all he did was, you know, speak the truth in a mocking voice and then come up with pitiful reasons to see it as a futurist. So, nah, to be honest, pal, I don't find that very convincing. I find that unconvincing. So let's turn more attention now to this fellow over here. Let me just double check that's working properly. Good. We're back in business.
And this directly repudiates the claims of many preterists and partial preterists today. And if you don't know what preterism is, you need to know, because it's one of the most popular, fastest growing eschatological movements and viewpoints in the church today. If you're in, more evangelical cessationist circles or whatever, people like R.C. Sproul, there's others, I'm failing to remember their names right now, but in the charismatic circles, people like Bill Johnson, Chris Volatin,
this point.
There's several others, Jonathan Wells. In the Old Testament, where it says, my son, Egypt, I brought you out of Egypt, right? And then Matthew, the writer of Matthew's gospel, applied the same scripture to the Lord Jesus. So in one context before, with the prophets and the law, it referred to Israel as a body, as a nation being brought out of Egypt. And then it was applied once again to Jesus when he came up out of Egypt after his parents had fled from, the genocide of Herod, right? So you had dual fulfillments in that scripture. And I just want you to listen to this language here in Jeremiah 51. And then I want you to consider the exact language in Revelation 19. And I want you to remember that John the Revelator, when he wrote the book of Revelation, he had this in his spirit, okay? He had Jeremiah, okay, in his spirit already. And then the Lord is using the same language in that prophecy, which I do believe is a future prophecy, okay? So Jeremiah 51, okay, starting with verse 6, it says, flee from the midst of Babylon. And I'll put it up here on the screen, just so you can follow along with me. Jeremiah, and I only just read.
This guy's boring me, man. Come on. Say
baloney. You cannot take away the Holy Spirit's right to speak through any scripture prophetically to any people group, to any generation, for any time period, for any application that he deems fit. And I'm telling you, Genesis to Revelation, cover to cover, it is more current, okay, than the newspaper you hold in your hand or the blog site you hold in your hand, okay, today, okay? It's as if the ink on this page is still wet. That's how current it is. That's how powerful the prophetic anointing.
Terrible, right? So my advice to anyone, and even to myself, because I haven't done a really good job with this video, but if you're going to make a video like he's doing, I mean, I'm doing a live stream. This is just chill. We're just hanging out, right? But if you're going to make a video, you need to start with the intention of the video. So what is the learning intention? And then what do you hope people take away from the video? It's such a good way to present, have a learning intention, have a couple of objectives that you want to achieve, and then get into it. Let people kind of know the structure of what you're going to talk about. Because I'm not going to sit through 15 minutes of a guy blabbering on about random prophecies. Maybe if I had more time, but not tonight. So he gets a downvote. Right, got another couple. This guy looks like he's done it well. He's got 12 reasons. So let's jump onto this next guy. So 12 reasons preterism cannot be true. And this comes from Revealing Truth. And we'll see what he has to say, because this guy looks like he's got it well planned out.
Hey everybody, Sean here, and welcome to Revealing Truth. Eschatology and the timing of Christ's return is a highly debated topic, yet not a topic that should cause division. The fact is that most people were saved by grace through faith in Christ, as Ephesians 2 tells us, and then they formed a belief on this topic one way or the other. For those of you that don't know, I believe in a post-tribulation, pre-wrath return of Christ.
Okay, guys, we need to get that close. Come on.
After the sixth seal is open. But today we're going to go through 12 points from Scripture that show that the preterist view on this topic cannot possibly be true. One reason there has been so much debate on this topic is because God has chosen to make some of this understanding unavailable until his chosen time. Daniel wrote in chapter 12, verse 8, I heard, but I did not understand. So I asked, my Lord, what will be the outcome of these things? And God responded, saying, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. He was even told in verse 4 to shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end, and that many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. So until that end time comes, we will all continue to not fully understand everything on this topic. But today we're going to look at Matthew 24 and show 12 reasons I believe prove that preterism cannot possibly be correct. I got the original information from Nelson Walters and just had to share this. So, reason number 1. In verse 7, we read that nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. But there were no kingdom against kingdom wars in the first century. Rome was a kingdom, but they fought against rebels that opposed them. So this wasn't fulfilled at the time of 70 AD.
Nah, I don't agree. I mean, you had the kingdoms of Israel fighting the Roman in the first Roman-Jewish war. I mean, you could debate the definition of a kingdom, but that's not a debate you're making against a preterist. That's a debate you're making with John on Patmos, you know what I mean? Depending on how he conceived it and wrote it down and the thought at the time of what was a nation and whatnot. There is a book, and I think it's in this room. Is it in this room? I don't know if it's in this room. It's called A Personal Revelation by Eric Fugit. I don't have it on me just now, but he details all the kingdoms and any kind of wars that could have been going on. I don't have it to hand, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a good point. He's made a good point, but I don't agree. I don't know everything about that period in history, though. Don't have it to hand, so I would just have to say I don't think so. But it's a good point.
Even in the previous verse, Jesus said that we'd hear of wars and rumors of wars, and that we shouldn't be troubled because this must happen. But the end was not yet. And the war in 70 AD was just a small war in comparison to some of the wars we see today.
Yeah, but you're making this quantitative value, and I don't think it was supposed to be a quantitative value. It's not like you get to the biggest war that could ever be possible, some interplanetary Star Wars thing, and that's it. Now this is the war. None of that matters because none of that involved covenant Israel. It needs to involve covenant Israel, which doesn't exist anymore.
Reason number 2. We read in verse 9 that at that time, Christians would be hated by all nations. But this isn't true either. The fact is that in 70 AD, all nations hadn't even heard of Jesus. Never mind, were hating his followers.
Well, then you could take it up with Paul, who said he preached the gospel to every creature under heaven. Okay, maybe there was some hyperbole involved here. I mean, this guy's hyper-literal, and that hyper-literal Enlightenment thinking has disorientated him. It's not that he's wrong from the rubric that he's using. He's actually right. But what I'm suggesting is he's completely disorientated. He's not approaching this in the manner with which it should be approached.
Reason number 3. In verse 13, Jesus said that he who endures to the end will be saved. And this is speaking, of course, about salvation, not being saved from the war itself. But Jesus didn't return in 70 AD to save anybody. But in the end times, this will happen. Reason number 4. In verse 14, Jesus said the gospel would be preached to all the world, and then the end would come. Well, this still hasn't happened, so it couldn't possibly have been fulfilled in 70 AD.
In 4 occasions.
Reason number 5. In verse 21, Jesus said that the greatest tribulation the world would ever see would happen at that time. But there's been far greater tribulation.
Yeah, man, because it's not about quantity, it's about the quality. It's about covenant Israel. That tribulation ended them. There hasn't been covenant Israel since. The temple has never stood again since. It was nigh on a genocide.
In the world than what happened in 70 AD. We only need to look at World War II to see that far more Jews were killed then compared to in 70 AD. So once again, this was not the fulfillment of what Jesus said.
It's irrelevant.
Reason number 6. In verse 22, Jesus said that if he didn't shorten that great tribulation time, then nobody on earth would survive. But he didn't return and stop anything during that war in 70 AD.
That's quite curious, actually. Did he really say that?
That war in 70 AD. Then
Matthew 24:22. Let's look that up. Matthew 24:22. Let's look up the Young's literal. Double check that. 22. And if those days were not shortened, no flesh would have been saved, but because of the chosen shall those days be shortened. Okay, so it doesn't actually say there that everyone will be destroyed in the world, if those days were not shortened. It's just speaking of that particular context during the Great Tribulation in Israel. you know, and it's true, you know, it was next to a genocide, you know, there was genocide adjacent.
Nobody on earth would survive.
Yeah, it doesn't say no one on earth, buddy. You're making that up.
But he didn't return and stop anything during that war in 70 AD.
Oh, gosh, imagine, like, that's what the Enlightenment has done to this man. He has spoken those words out in space-time. Now, I know that Jesus isn't some fragile-minded person who's hurt by him saying that, and I'm sure Jesus loves this guy like the most amazing love in the world. Like, if you could feel it, you'd feel like he was the most loved person in the whole universe, right? But he's wrong, and he said these wrong words, you know. Jesus did indeed return, just not in a manner that makes sense to your mortal mind.
Reason number 7, in verses 23 and 24, Jesus said there would be false Christs and false prophets doing signs and wonders that were so convincing that even the elect might be fooled by them. But we have no record of such things happening in 70 AD.
You do, but it's about if you trust the Apocrypha. There was a magician who was doing signs, and it gets weird. It's in one of these apocryphal testimonies. I don't remember which one. The Testament of Paul or something like that. I don't know.
Reason number 8. In verse 27, Jesus said that his return would be like lightning in the sky from the east to the west, and everyone would see him. This would have been a huge event, but we have no records of this happening ever. So once again, Jesus did not return in 70 AD.
Again, man, it could be the you know, employing hyperbole. It could be, you know, well, that's the one reason. The other reason would be, not reason. I'm sorry, I'm getting tired now. Jesus also in Acts 1:11 left in a manner that was not lightning from east to west, right? He ascended and a cloud received him. That's what the text tells us. And then the angel says, you know, in the manner that you've seen him leave, so he shall return. And only a small handful of people saw that, right? It wasn't the whole world, right? And his lightning flashes from the east into the west. That's not the whole world really either, is it? Seeing that. I mean, if lightning flashes from the east to west in my town, you're not seeing that if you're sitting in Memphis, are you? So I think, you know, a spiritual approach needs to be taken to truly understand and comprehend what's being shared. He's bringing the Enlightenment. That's what this is, by the way. Don't be mistaken. People didn't always used to think like this. Indeed, if you look at other cultures in the world, they don't think like this. Right? It's the reason here in Scotland we had a terrorist attack, and it was a doctor, an Islamic doctor, and he drove his car into Glasgow airport and then set himself on fire. And I don't know if he meant to do that or what happened. And then he got attacked. And he was a doctor. You know, he'd spent all these years at medical school only to carry out this terrorist attack. And you might think, well, how does that make any sense? Well, it's because his culture isn't coming from a place of Enlightenment thinking. Now, this isn't a big advert for romanticism, right? But these are much more romantic people. You know, he's thinking, well, I'm going to kill myself now in jihad and then go to paradise. I'm going to go to this like Valhalla, right? That's their rubric. That's their perspective. It's very different. And so you can see the benefit of the Enlightenment, right? Because it preserves people against such terrible things. But it also intoxicates the mind and puts a barrier between you and God in some way, because it makes you approach God with scientism, with a strict adherence to literalism and physicalism. That's what's happening here.
Reason number 9. In verse 29, Jesus said that immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun would be darkened, the moon would not give off its light, and stars shall fall from heaven.
This is perfect. This is so perfect. Because this is Nicodemus asking Jesus, should I go into my mother's womb to be born a second time? So what this man has done is he's brought the Enlightenment values, right, from, you know, after the 17th century, and he's read this line, and he's using that lens. So he's thinking about the actual sun. He's thinking about the actual moon, and he's thinking about the actual stars. But if you're familiar with this verse and with what it actually refers to, then you know that these are rich symbols. The sun, the moon, and the stars speak to different facets of Hebrew life, of his, the covenant Israel, the high priest, the Sanhedrin, the temple, the covenant, the priests. All these different things had a connection or some kind of allegorical way to refer to them. I don't have those notes at hand right now, so I couldn't tell you, but it's something like the sun is the high priest, the moon is this, and the stars are the priesthood, the Levitical priesthood, or something like that, to give you the gist. But he's going to go ahead and tell us that these celestial bodies were not darkened.
Once again, we have no record of these cosmic signs happening anywhere immediately after the war in 70 AD.
You see what's happening? The kingdom doesn't come with observation. Things that are seen are temporary and perishable. We look towards things. I mean, think of that language that Paul uses. We look at things not seen. We look toward invisible things. The kingdom does not come with observation, says Jesus. And what are these people doing? They are using, I mean, in a way they're right, and they're so wrong. They're so blind, because they are using what our society tells you to use. It's a scientific material approach. And it's really good for navigating the world. It's fantastic. There's nothing better than the scientific method for navigating this world. But there is a problem when you use the scientific method to interpret the Bible. And sadly, that's what this is here. Okay, I can see we got a little bit in the chat. We got a little bit going on in the chat. Oh no, is there a problem with the video, or is that a past issue? No, it's fixed. It's fixed. So you're saying nothing is literal; it is all spiritual. If you want to go and tip it that far, yes, I wouldn't go there, but it's better to do that with spirituality than to adhere to strict materialism. Strict materialism is great for your job, for practical engagement with the world, but you don't get to God by using a Ouija board or knocking on a mystical wall multiple times with just the right tune, or saying the right words and manipulating the molecules in the air. That's not how you approach God. It's spiritual, it's inner work, it's meditative, it's contemplative, it's introspective, it's prayerful. That's what we lean towards.
Reason number 10. In verse 30, we're told that after those previous things happen, then the Son of Man would appear in the sky and everyone would see him. This would have been a worldwide event that many would have written about. So to think this actually happened in 70 AD is completely illogical.
It's not completely illogical, my friend. In fact, maybe it is illogical, actually, because you can't approach this like a Vulcan. It defies your wisdom. It defies your logic. You can't comprehend the use of hyperbole. You can't comprehend these things. It's tricky. There's a crossing of wires. But rest assured, when Jesus said he would return in the first century, there are some standing here who shall not taste death till the Son of Man comes. These are the days of vengeance, that all things written shall be fulfilled. You will not finish going through the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. See, I am coming quickly, and my reward is with me. The end is closer than we first believed. The end is near. It is the last hour. Come on. Come on, man. It's clear as day. There's no debate. No one would want to take that debate. Anyone who says the time is near when it's not, you're not to follow these people. Luke 21. I mean, either Jesus was wrong and his disciples are wrong, in which case then you can maybe argue preterism. That's what C.S. Lewis said about Matthew 24. He called it the most embarrassing text in the Bible because it made a fool of Jesus. And then other people have tried to explain it away by saying, well, when you look at a hill, when you look at a mountain and see other mountains, you might think they're very close together. But in fact, there's great distance between the mountains and you just can't see from your perspective. And so this is why Jesus was wrong. He saw some things then and other things, were a little further away. Maybe, but I don't think so.
Reason number 11 is in verse 31, and that Jesus would send his angels to gather the elect from the four corners of the earth. Why would anyone believe this actually happened?
Listen to this, man. Listen to how absurd this is. Again, let's use the Enlightenment framework, the empiricism, observation, logic, and reason. Let's bring that to bear. So he's suggesting that angels are going to gather up all of humanity from the four corners of the earth, the four winds, from one end of the heaven to the other. And they're going to gather the elect up. In what way? Just physically grabbing people and pulling them towards a certain location? And if you say yes, that's exactly right. It's like, don't you see just how brutalist that is? Don't you see that you're bringing too much of yourself into that? I mean, I suppose it's okay to say that, well, I don't quite know what that would look like. And that's the beginning of wisdom, I feel, That's how you start to see the sense. Just follow the truth. Don't try and bring more into the text. And I know we all have a bias, but as I say, I'm not here as team preterism. I don't tend to be a preterist. It just so happens that that's the description that best fits what I have come to see as being the truth of the narrative. And I might be wrong. I just don't think I am.
And that Jesus would send his angels to gather the elect from the four corners of the earth. Why would anyone believe this actually happened in 70 AD? That all Christians were gathered at that time? How did the church grow if there were no more Christians left in 70 AD?
Okay, Dub, what you saying to it? Give me a link and step off your monologue so you know a little about the Bible, but you're going to monologue to like 5 people. You're afraid to talk to someone. I don't know. Can I invite you? That'd be quite fun, actually. Copy. Send this link to your guests. You may also want to share our instructions for guests. You can have up to 6 people. All right. What kind of energy are you going to bring, Dub? Because I'm quite tired. Don't jump on here and be too crazy, right? Right. So up to 6 people can join. Again, I'm not quite sure how that will work. I think if you put that into your URL, hopefully I'll get some kind of notification to let you in. All right, okay. I'm going to add you to the stage. All right, now we get to... This will be cool, man.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Not bad, man. Not bad. All right. So you don't agree with the preterist position, am I correct?
I'm not really sure what the position is, but it doesn't sound like it's going the same way that I am, which is fine. I always love a good conversation. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
That's the purpose
So
of jumping on. It's not to argue. It's to just kind of see your point. And it sounds like you do know a little bit of the Bible. So if you know a little bit, I know a little bit. We get together, we make several points, and we have fun with it. And hopefully your crowd enjoys it, right?
yeah, man, that sounds
Hopefully you
good
get
to
a
me.
couple other people jump on too. It'll be fun, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. I
All
don't
right.
know. This is going a lot better than I would prefer, because yeah, sometimes I'll just sit here and talk to a screen, but it's nice to have you on, man. So yeah, I'm expecting to get schooled by someone such as yourself, B-Dub. You're coming on here with a lot of confidence, so
No,
say,
that's not what I'm about. That's not what I'm about. So it's fine. You're not going to get schooled. Trust me, bro. You're not going to
all
get schooled.
right. So
I for people that claim they know nothing, especially I'm usually kind of calm anyways. Unless somebody else lights the fire, then I'm good. But I'm sure you'll get a couple more people jumping on here, and they might get a little feisty, and then I might get a little feisty. I won't be feisty with you. You know what I'm saying? So here we
wait. Are
go.
you,
I mean,
Dub, are you bringing the boys? Are you bringing the boys with you?
oh no. Believe me, my friend. I don't have any. I don't have. I've been kicked off multiple channels just because they usually what they do is they'll hang hang the fact that they are the channel owner over me and then try to shut me down when things get a little rough between like a couple people, and then it's like, hold on, I have something to say that's really important, and then they'll cut me off, and I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm not coming back. But I try
Yeah,
my best to not do that. So anyways, what's
totally.
your main kind of thing here with this video? Just keep actually, I think what would help is if you continue on with your video, right? And then
Cool.
maybe I can jump in on that. And then
Nice.
maybe, you're going to go with your ideas. And then maybe if I can jump in on that after you're kind of done, when you pause or whatever, I think that'd be a good place to start. Yeah.
Dude, that sounds
Pretty
awesome.
fair.
Right. So let's
All
hit this
right.
guy. So I'm gonna let this guy speak on the video here, revealing truth. I'll respond to him, then you can kick in, all right? Let's see.
And the 12th reason is in the next couple of verses, where Jesus says that the generation that sees all those things happen would know his return was near. Nobody in 70 AD saw all those things happen. And therefore, based on this and the previous reasons, preterism cannot possibly be true.
All right. Well, I haven't committed everything to mind in Matthew 24, but what else? My position would be just to say that yes, I believe that those things described in Matthew 24 were experienced by those first century believers, and that the culmination of that prophecy was in 70 AD. And part of the reason I believe that the falling of the temple is very significant and is part of the Matthew 24 message is because it refers to Daniel 12:7, which tells us that when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, these things will be finished. And that Daniel prophecy is often seen as the kind of corollary, or whatever that word is, it's seen as this reflection of Revelation and the prophecy there. So I synthesize that together, and I say that, yeah, Matthew 24 is indeed the whole kabang, and that it happened. It came to complete fulfillment at 70 AD. That's my perspective. Nice and casual. If you want to pop in a point of view there, Dub.
That's interesting. I mean, I think that these things have not happened yet. But based on a couple of things, but the ones that come to mind would be the last point that this guy made that you're showing the video.
Yeah.
Jeremiah 33, which it's about from like 14 on through the rest. And there's at one point where people just basically start saying that in general, people believe that God has given up on his two groups, families, if you call them. And
Yeah.
it's saying that, okay, so I don't think that's happened yet. Daniel, I don't believe Daniel's happened yet in the way that a lot of people think. And when I say that, I say like Daniel 8:2. That's talking about Daniel seeing a revelation in Greece, I believe it is. Or no, that one's in it's in between the Iran-Iraq border. So that is Babylon. And then Daniel 8:21 says that the horn that is referred to, the the goat with the big horn, comes out of Greece. And then I don't believe any of that's happened. I believe that there is going to be a third temple. I mean, like, I see other things too. If you can ever look up like uh, Russian Orthodox, they're in their second patriarchy, which to me, I sit and wonder and I go, well, I mean, so there was a first patriarchy and they almost completely lost their entire religion pretty much. So that could be like the beast having a head wound kind of thing. But then furthermore, to just not just throw something out there and then not have any backup to it. So I do have a second point to it, would be that I think they're in their like seventh or eighth patriarch. So in within the second patriarchal period, some people like to turn to Revelation where there's reference to seven hills, and they say,
Yeah.
"Oh, seven hills, that's Rome." Well,
Yeah.
if you look up seven hills and Moscow, you'll see that Moscow, according to Wikipedia, anyways, was
Yeah.
built on seven hills as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to go over here, and I know that I'm throwing like a lot at you at the same time. I don't really expect a response to it, you know what I'm saying? But that's just
Yeah.
my thoughts.
And I think what you've shared is perfectly reasonable. You know, I think, yeah, I've Googled that there. Moscow built on seven hills as Rome was. So there is that idea out there. You know, what you're saying about Daniel 8:24. Yeah, we have mention of
That was
this.
Daniel 8:21, actually. Daniel
Sorry.
8:21, I believe it is. That's all
Yeah,
right.
Daniel 8:21, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia. I don't know how that's pronouncing that, but we'll say Greece, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. So yeah, I mean, it looks to me like you're looking at the scripture, you're looking at the world, and you're making sense of it. You know, you're applying the scripture to what you're observing in the world today. And, you know, from that perspective, it would be a bit much for me to turn around and say you're wrong, because I can't say that you're wrong. You know what you're doing, the way you're applying your reason, I get it and it makes sense to me. But I'll tell you, my main hang up, right? The main thing you would need to do to persuade me that preterism is wrong is the scriptures where Jesus explicitly.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Can you I'm sorry. I am not the most educated person in the world. Can you explain preterism to me?
Oh yeah, sure. So preterism, it's a very niche thing as well, man. You probably wouldn't have heard of it anyway, but it's basically just the term given to a group of Christians. Some people would call us heretics uncharitably, right? But we're a group of Christians who believe that all prophecy was fulfilled. Maybe not all of us, but a number of full preterists, because there's a full preterist and a partial preterist position. But let me tell you the definition of preterism. Preterism just means that you believe certain or all prophecy was fulfilled at 70 AD. Okay, so that's the gist of it. Prophecy was fulfilled at 70 AD, and you would probably be a partial preterist. You don't know, you know, it's just
And
a.
I can stop you right there if you'd let me, and I could prove that that's not the case.
Okay, let's hear it.
If you go to Revelation and looked up, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus, you would understand right there that the spirit of prophecy is still here. You know what I'm saying? So not all prophecy can be gone. Now, prophecy, as far as Old Testament, you could say that, and I'd be like, well, there's no way for me to confirm or deny that, because at the same, because I can look at something like Mormonism and go, well, they claim they had a prophet, right? But
Yeah.
then what extra prophecy is needed? And I think when Jesus says it is finished, that means the prophecy portion, as far as physically saying what's going to happen, there's nothing more necessary. So,
Okay.
but the spirit of prophecy and revelation is still alive. So I can't say that I'm a preterist.
All right. So the spirit of prophecy is still alive. Okay. I mean, there's a lot there to explore. A lot of digging that we need to be done too. But I'll accept that. I'll take that. I'll take that as, you know, I don't agree with it necessarily because I'm struggling with the connection between the spirit of prophecy still existing and therefore preterism can't be true. Is it just because you think, well, the spirit of prophecy will remain until these prophecies are fulfilled? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying the spirit of prophecy will remain until basically a 1 Thessalonians, is it 2:4 or something like that, where it basically says like the comforter is removed, or until
Yes.
the
Right.
comforter
I know what
is
you
out
mean.
of the way, right?
Yeah.
So I think the spirit of prophecy remains. Therefore, if somebody's talking about preterism as you described it,
Yeah.
then they would be incorrect. I don't know how exactly somebody wants to try to define it, but the spirit of prophecy is still here. So therefore, prophecy is still here, is what I think. So,
Right.
but once that is removed, oh gosh, I don't want to be here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, and it's a perspective that I'm sure I used to share. Um, let me ask you something then, right? So, see the Book of Revelation, the very first verse. It says, "The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him, to shew unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass." If I just stop there, so this book, this revelation of Jesus Christ, right, that God gave to Jesus to show his servants things which must shortly come to pass. What do you think of that language? The fact that it says, well, my understanding of that is that the contents of the book of Revelation are a description of things which must shortly come to pass. That's what I'm taking from that verse. Do you think maybe I'm being a bit too, I'm zeroing in the wrong detail or something? Or
I think you're 100% correct, and I think that some of the things that, I mean, for me personally, that I've come to think about on this particular topic is, number one, when he was still in his earthly ministry, he basically said that I have things that I cannot tell you now, for you won't be able to bear them. Okay. And I can find the exact verse on that if you'd like.
no.
However, if you go to John 17:5, that's his prayer to
Yeah, man.
say pretty much, restore me to the glory I once had before the world was. So, and then we only have a few verses to where we can look at it and go, well, where's before the world was? That's Genesis 1:1. And there's only a few verses before that. One of them's Elohim. So then I go, okay, well, that basically means Jesus is God. And then we go to Revelation 1:17, where he says, I am the first and the last, and so on and so forth in that verse. And then we go to Isaiah 44:6, because as a Gentile, let's be honest, at least I think that's what I am. It doesn't matter anyways, but when we go to Isaiah 44:6, it says, I am the first and the last, there is no other God besides me. And there's plenty of others, we can go to, is Jesus your savior? Okay, let's go to Isaiah 43:11. And then it's, well, God says he's the only savior. So, I mean, but yeah, the Father is saying, yep, okay, the prayer in 17:5, John 17:5, answered. Then you get Revelation 1:1. The Father reveals this to the Son, and there you go. It starts going. First and the last, there it is. He got restored to where he was before the world was, so on and so forth, is the way that I kind of look at it.
All right. So That's yeah. I mean, if I'm understanding you correctly, then are you saying like that first verse there kind of speaks to the whole of Revelation from the time, like from the beginning of time almost? It's like that. It's like it's pulling the curtain back or something like that.
I can say if that's true because God reveals the beginning, the end from the beginning. I believe that's a verse. That one's
Yeah, it
just kind
sounds
of
right.
in my memory. It's not,
Yeah, it sounds right.
yeah, it does sound right. And so therefore, again, I think that John 17:5 is one that people really they miss. They just miss it because they're so concentrated on saying, well, I believe in Trinity, so that's why I see what I see. And someone else can say something else, and that's fine. But,
Yeah,
it's like the Muslims go, oh, well, if he, why is he going to ask the Father? Is he saying a prayer to himself kind of thing? And I'm just like, well, let's just read the text and try to let it speak for itself and then get understanding from there. Just so I'm not, I don't like to hear my own voice. I don't really like to hear my own thoughts because sometimes my thoughts suck. And
no, man,
the way that I speak, it doesn't come out correctly. So, but
welcome to my world, man.
yeah,
uh, but no, man, I really appreciate you sharing that, and I think there's a lot of nuance there, isn't there, to understanding the Trinity. I think it's a great mystery. I don't hold anything against anyone who's got a different way of seeing God, because I think God is such a mystery that even the word Trinity can't really capture just how the majesty of God, But in terms of understanding the narrative and the Bible, I can see the utility in it. I can. Um, I'm just kind of curious though. See, if I'm going to try and find the verse for you. Um, so I think it's Matthew 16, 27 to 28.
let me
Right.
get on the same page with you. Hold on.
Yeah, no worries.
Matthew, what? 16?
Matthew 16, 27 to 28, right? And this is
27, 28. Okay. Go ahead.
all right. So, by the way, what kind of Bible do you use?
NASB 95.
That's cool, man. I use the New King James just because I kind of like that, but I'm not a King James guy. It's just the one I use. So, right. So I'll scroll down here.
Interesting verse you pulled up there. What are your
Right.
thoughts?
Right. So it is an interesting verse, isn't it? So for the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and he will reward each according to his works. Assuredly, I say to you, there are some standing here shall not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So the reason I share that is because that is the preterist kind of that's the first preterist domino in the dominoes that fall that would make you identify as a preterist. So what I do is I read that verse and I say, that sounds like Jesus is saying he's going to return before some people that he's talking to have even died. And that's what I'm interpreting. Did you get something different from that?
I don't actually know how to interpret this particular verse because I've not. Well, I mean,
Dan, you're a
because
preterist. That's it. You're a preterist now. You're in the team, man. I'm joking.
uh, if somebody, so the only thing that I can really connect this to, I mean, is what I wouldn't even want to say because
It's on the
this
spot, man. You know what I mean? Just you can think out loud. There's no this isn't a definitive answer, right? We're just exploring stuff.
not tasting okay. Until the sun. So there it says, well, first off, it says, truly I say to you, there are some. So that implies that it's more than one, because
Mhm.
if there was only one, it would have said there's one of you who are standing here. So, I mean, and then I'm going to go into it's just, I don't like talking about Judas, but Judas is referred to as someone who's never born, right?
Yeah.
So that could be, I mean, who knows, man? You know what I'm saying? Like, who knows exactly what this verse means?
That's it.
But
And hey, it's a bit much to try and explain it all now, isn't it? But it's one to think about, isn't it? It's quite an interesting one.
it really is. I mean, uh, the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So, I mean, it also makes me think of Saint Stephen when he got stoned. So when
Yeah,
he got stoned, he looked up and he said he was able to see. So there's multiple
and that
spots you
would
can
be
go with it. It's
that would be
very
before.
mysterious.
Yeah, man. So hey, good work, man. That's really good thinking on your feet. Because I thought I had you there. I thought I had you. I was reeling you in to preterism. Only joking, man. I'm not trying to, not trying to
No,
catch
man, I
you.
don't think you're trying to. I don't think you're trying to sting me. You know what I mean?
No.
And to be honest, there was one person the other day, kind of almost stung me a little bit, but I was like, nah, I'm all right. I'll be all right. You know what I mean? I just like having conversations about the stuff because I love it, to be honest. So
It's literally, man, it's the most important thing, isn't it? I think you're someone like me who just finds the universe and our place in it is just a big mystery, and it's so marvelous. I mean, what else is there to think about? I know there's other stuff to think about, but this is the most wonderful,
no doubt about it, my friend.
Yeah. So what's your opinion then? Like, I suppose you're kind of new to this whole preterist idea, and obviously it's going to sound wrong to you. I've got this idea that Jesus arrived a second time in 70 AD, but that's not going to make sense to you because I don't mean that Jesus actually physically arrived in 70 AD. What I mean to suggest is that the second coming was not one that happened with observation. I mean, Christ did say, the kingdom doesn't come with observation, that you should say, look here or look there. And, Paul said that we look to things unseen, doesn't he? So when I talk about a second coming at 70 AD, what I really mean to suggest is that the old covenant is judged and destroyed. As soon as that temple comes down, that's it. And we have this new covenant now. And I know that you'll follow along with that, the idea of the new covenant coming, but I'm adding stuff to it that you probably won't sit right with you because you'll think, well, you're putting way too much here. You're trying to say that Jesus came the second time at 70 AD, but the world isn't how I would expect it to look if that's true. However, my perspective on that is that the actual physical world isn't going to change so miraculously and so instantaneously just because we're in the new covenant age, which I see as the fulfillment. Indeed, I think that it's through the kingdom within us that we will gradually and progressively manifest the kingdom. And, I feel like you pointed to the Eastern Orthodox Church and said there's, maybe there's something to them that's a bit almost sinister. And I would suggest that, if you look at church history, there's lots of different sects out there that have done terrible things. They've got blood on their hands. And even the modern churches, not that I'm being too judgmental, but, the Catholic Church had a lot of controversy in the last 10 years when things came out. So, I don't look at the church as some perfect representation.
Can I stop you there because
Yeah, please, because I'm going on. Yeah, please.
No, because you're hitting on two different points. Your first one I almost just lost. Oh, okay, it was the first and second coming. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So let me allow me to a chance to grab a pen and pencil to write this down real quick because I'm outside. So hold on one sec.
Yeah, man, that sounds nice. I bet the sun is shining over there in America
So
somewhere.
the first one is first and second coming, and the second idea you're on is sects. So it's first and second coming, and now you're on sects, and you were just talking about Catholicism and the last 10 years. So you can continue there.
Yeah, sorry, just to be sure that you heard me properly because we've both got accents. Sex as in sectarianism, yeah? no, not sex.
Yeah, no, as in denominations, yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Yeah,
let me tell you about those Catholics, man.
there have been many changes that are trying to get pushed now. I don't know about 10 years ago, but
Oh gosh. Yeah, so then I was just talking about different sects of the sects of the church, and even the the contests between Protestants and Catholics, and what was the real reasons behind these warring factions, and what were they trying to do? Were they trying to make a better world, or were they trying to accumulate power and influence? And when you go back to Constantine and those first big, God, I forgot the word now, but the big kind of conflabs that they had, the councils, the different councils, like the Council of Nicaea. So, when they try and make the church a bit more sort of aligned with the state, let's say, and endow it with certain powers, I feel like that was done in a fashion that might be questionable because of who Constantine was. There's a man that killed his wife, a man that killed his son. And people, you could argue that he had good reason to do it because someone told him that his son had slept with his wife or something weird. And it's like it wasn't his own mum. I don't know. There was a bunch of weirdness going on there. But I just feel like Constantine, who aligned church and state, maybe his intentions were not entirely pure, and that the real Christians are not the ones who are famous throughout history. The real Christians are not the ones who, were in the church and have their names recorded in history. While those people can still be good Christians, I feel like the best of Christians, we don't know their names. They've been alive for thousands. Well, they've been in the world. Not that they've been consistently alive for thousands of years, but throughout the many thousands of years, there's been so many lives lived that were good and beautiful lives towards God. And I guess what I'm just trying to do there is minimize the authority of the church, to put it plainly. Not that I like to do that, but I'm just thinking that sometimes the church gets it wrong, and I think that's what I'm trying to say. I don't mean to be too critical of the church, because the church can get it right, and there can be really good people in the church, in any church, but I think sometimes they get it wrong. And we saw that, like, I don't know if you know the history of a guy called William Tyndale, and he was a translator, and they killed him for translating the Bible into, I think it was English.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, right?
Yeah, gosh, what I mean. So yeah, I'm kind of rambling on.
It sounds like they don't want the commoners to really know what's going on right there with that move.
Yeah, man. So that kind of reveals some of the kind of motivations. Like, some of these church people wanted to just have power and authority more than they wanted to love and do right, But that's not to say the whole character of the church is that way. It's just an observation I'm making.
No, it's an observation that is correct, and it's one that is it's kind of scary actually for church goers. But what I would say to church goers, or people who are holding on to what they have, is that the Bible does mention something about teachers versus those that don't know. So it says pretty much the teachers are going to catch a flogging, and the one who didn't know will just get a whip. So much as to say, don't run away. You know what I mean? Just because you might be taught something that might have been incorrect, don't run away. Just hang in there, And even Jesus to the disciples, basically like, listen to what these people are telling you. Listen to these synagogue folks and do what they say. And it's the same idea, because do what they say because they're the teachers. So, don't run away and go worship another god or whatever. I mean, you can try to go out there and find the perfect church, but tell me where that is. Okay. Me personally, I'm Catholic. I know plenty of things, Okay, I want to go to a verse right now. It's 1 Corinthians 7:14. And what that basically is going to say is an unbelieving wife can save a believing husband and vice versa. And if you stay together, your children are good. But then if you don't stay together, then your children are screwed. I mean, I can get the exact verse. I know it so well because I'm from a broken family. Now,
Yeah.
I'm an interesting case because one of my parents went to the church and asked specifically if she can get divorced and remarried. And they told her yes. So they were teaching her something that I don't agree with. And
Yeah.
now I get stuck in a rough spot, right? I'm stuck in a definite rough spot. And I could also talk a little bit about Vatican II when it describes about Muslims. We worship the same one God. No, we don't. That's not even close. You know what I mean? So, but so we have problems, and I see them. But I would never tell somebody to run away from the Catholic Church. You know what I mean? I would never say that. It's not happening at all. So
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I agree with you. I think, I want to be careful when I'm pointing out the mistakes that I see in churches. I also know that some of them have some really good teachings and they're a really good source of community for people. And, I've attended Catholic church a few times. I'm not a Catholic, but I've been to a few services, and there's nothing wrong with it. And there's really great fellowship afterwards. They have teas, coffees, and, we sit down and chat and you meet some good people that way, So, yeah, I'm with you there, man. I feel you.
well, because you're mentioning the denomination / sect issue, and that's brought up. Paul brought that up too. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, I don't think of it that way. Although the Catholic Church might say, "Hey, we're the only one, and everyone else, if you're outside of our church, you're in trouble or whatever." And I'm like, I can't say that. You know what I mean? I don't know how someone else can, but that's fine. I'll leave it there. That's their teaching. So I'll leave it there. I don't need to judge people who claim that they're in Christ. I'm not going to try to do that. You know what I'm saying? I don't know enough to do that, maybe. And maybe I never will, or maybe I never should. And maybe no one else should either. I don't really know. But I think what's happening now pretty much is at a certain point, regardless of denomination, the fullness of the Gentiles eventually does come into play, right? You're
Okay.
familiar with the term fullness of Gentile. So
Yeah.
it won't matter what denomination you are. If the fullness of the Gentiles is coming in and it looks close to that time, I'm not saying that it does now, but if to you it looks close to that time, eventually the Thessalonians quote is going to come into play, where the strainer is removed, and guess what? None of y'all know anything. You're all going to be deceived by random stuff. You're all looking around because some people never read the Bible. Not to say that that's a prerequisite to a salvation, right? Because I can bring up a verse to defend that, but I think that that's kind of what we might be looking at. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Oh, I can assure you my thoughts on that are going to be very strange to you. But I think what would be constructive actually, Dub, is by the way, you okay with me calling you Dub? Is that okay?
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think what would be cool is if I suggest to you, I'm putting into the chat right now a name, and it's Don Preston, and I put the word debate after it, right? Because I think it would be good for you to listen to Don Preston debate people on the issue of preterism. So I'll put preterism in there so you know what it's all about. It's in the chat. So Don Preston debate preterism, not just now, I'm just saying like over the next couple of days or later tonight or whatever, whenever you've got time. Delve into that. Look up Don Preston because he's the main authority that kind of looks into this. He's quite scholarly as well.
Is Don Preston, he's a preterist then?
Yeah. So I'm not saying go and watch his videos, but if you watch him debate people, he's so good. And I'm not trying to say that to win you over to this way of seeing things. I just mean that will give you a better insight into where I'm coming from. Because
Yeah,
if you've never engaged with preterism before, it's kind of weird, man. It's very different. It's pushing everything back to like 70 AD almost and saying, well, most prophecy finds
I
its
think
fulfillment.
I think, to be honest, I want to hear how you would view just this one verse.
Okay.
Well, maybe it's two.
All
All right,
right.
so this is Daniel 11:31 to 32. I've never heard of what a preterist was before, but this is the first verses that come to mind. Forces from him will arise, desecrate the sanctuary fortresses, and do away with the regular sacrifice. And then they will set up the abomination of desolation. Now, this is the one I really want to say. By a smooth word, he will turn to godlessness those who act wickedly toward the covenant, but the people who know their God will display strength and take action. So, what I'm trying to say is, from a preterist point of view, and you're saying all these things already happened, how would it be that we still have people who, I guess a preterist would say, pretend to know their God and will display strength and take action?
Okay, it's an interesting one. So Daniel 11:31 to 32. And the forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress. Then they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place there the abomination of desolation. So, like my understanding, if I break it down verse by verse there, and I don't have all my notes to hand right now, so it's not going to sound like a polished
No, it's
response.
okay. It's okay. You're off the cup, and it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, my understanding of that is that these things would have happened between 66 and 70 AD. There would have been some force, be it a Roman force that comes in. They would have stopped the daily sacrifices, and they would. I think I don't know if they would have put something in its place, or just by being there, they were they were kind of desecrating things. Um, or I don't know if I heard something about somebody's blood or something being spilled there or something like that. I don't remember. I'm sorry, but the next verse says, "Then, sorry, those who do wickedly against the covenant, he shall corrupt."
I think what you're referring to is like it was. I don't know much about. I'm not like a big historian, by the way, so I don't know. Like you'll probably smoke me on all the historian pieces you want. I only try to concentrate on Bible verses, but I think you were trying to say that like pig's blood was spilt in there or something.
Something like that,
Something
yeah.
wild. Yeah. Okay, I get it.
Right, yeah, man. Yeah, that sounds about right. But yeah, the second one I'd probably find a bit more tricky. Those who do wickedly against the covenant, he shall corrupt with flattery. But the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. I would have to be all this in its context again, but maybe it would be like the way I'm seeing this, right?
I want to ask you this though, because again, I've never encountered anyone with beliefs that 70 AD was that those two verses. The first one was 70 AD, and then after that, immediately after that, it almost like it got fulfilled. But here's a question that can kind of spark some thoughts for you. I think you might be familiar with the verse that says, like, the tears will subside, or,
Yes.
okay, so my question to you would be, in your lifetime, have the tears subsided? Have you ever ran into something that you didn't like to where you cried? Have you ever
Yes.
lost a family member, a friend, something like that? So then that would be the only point I have. You could expound on what your thoughts are.
Sure. It's a really, really good question. And my answer to that is certainly, my tears have fallen, and there is the verse, God will wipe away every tear. And it makes it sound like that, there's not going to be hardship experience. There shouldn't be hardship experience. Once Jesus comes again and establishes what he's coming to establish, that, you know, lions and lambs should be laying down together, and it sounds like a place where, you know, happiness is the default. My response to that is that language that's used about not shedding tears again, it's not referring to the extinction or, you know, the removing of the challenge and the limitation that define the human experience. And I would struggle right now to justify that biblically. I'm just kind of speaking from the cuff,
No,
but man,
it's well said. Well said.
yeah,
So far, you're well said.
I appreciate it, man. I would suggest that, you know, the things that make us human are retained, and that the tears that we're not shedding, I think it's to be understood maybe a bit more esoterically or a bit more spiritually. And it's like, if we consider relationship with God, if we consider life and death, that, you know, God truly has us, God is truly there with us, and that, you know, the tears that we might cry now, they're not the same kind of tears. We can mourn, we can have grief, but we are held and we are God's. And like, not we are God's, but I mean, you know, God possesses us, you know, we're in God's hands. So that to me is more what it's talking to. It's not like literally taking away the tears and the pain. That is part of it, is baked into the human experience. But ultimately now, we are, you know, we have resurrection life within us today. You know, we are resurrected. We have that inside of us, so that if this body should die, yet we shall still live. You know, it's very different, because I know that the futurist or just normal, you know, mainstream Christianity believes that in the future we're going to have these resurrection bodies and it's going to be like a glorified physical body. I don't believe that necessarily. I don't think it's a physical body we have. I think the resurrected body is spiritual, to put it plainly. And I know I'm kind of veering away from the question now, so I'll stop. I'll stop.
That's not bad. I kind of, well, I wanted to point just to scripture, right? Because we'll go with for the rich man and Lazarus scenario, for example, right?
Yeah, man.
And you're familiar with that, I'm sure. The rich man, those tears didn't clear, you know, they just
Yeah.
didn't. And everyone's going to resurrect in some form or fashion. The Old Testament says, whether you try to hide yourself in Hades or try to come up to heaven, I will find you. You cannot escape my judgment, is pretty much what that's saying. And so I just think that, so for a 70 AD guy, the question that I would now have would be is, do you love your life? And that's a hard question, because I look at mine and I go, mine has been so ripped up, but I've been trying to be so honest. Maybe my honesty is the problem. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to continue, you know, nothing I could do. My mom passed away. Look, mom passed away. She wrote a will. I'm pretty much the only one that read it. I read it 40, times at least. I bring up a certain case. I go, do you see this right here? Let's go through this example. I asked a question about the example. Everyone goes, oh, no, she wouldn't have meant that. And I'm like, it says it right there. What are you talking about? I'm being honest, and you never even read it, but you're just going with your own opinion? Oh, okay. So I'm still crying at 40 plus years old. How is that fair? I don't know. I mean, unless somebody wanted to walk up to me and, you know, call me Judas and be like, for sure, you're Judas. Then I'd be like, okay, well, then I guess I deserve it. You know what I mean? I
I
don't
know
think
exactly.
that's the case. So I think
Yeah.
that the 70 AD, there's a lot that has happened, but if I think that some of with the last point that the point before the last one on the video that was made, which I was trying to refer into the chat to Jeremiah 33,
Yeah.
because if we can go there really quickly, this is a strange set of verses. It's really strange, and we don't need to go through the whole thing, but I'll look at Jeremiah 33:20.
Okay.
So 19 says, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, saying, thus says the Lord, if you can break my covenant for the day and my covenant for the night, so that day and night will not be at their appointed time, then my covenant may also be broken with David my servant, so that he will not have a son to reign on his throne, and with the Levitical priests, my ministers. Now, if we go to Matthew 27:45, it says, 27:45. Now from the 6th hour, darkness fell upon the land until the 9th hour. Now the 6th hour and the 9th hour means noon to 3, according to what I'm looking at.
Okay.
The definition of that. So something did happen there. And I think it does directly point to Jeremiah 33. And then it goes on to describe certain things. And some of them are just up to you to ponder. It's not for me to tell you, it's just for you to ponder, right? But
Yeah. That's really interesting.
I think so, right? I think so. And then another spot that I like to look at actually is if I just turned one page. So if I look at Jeremiah 31:22, and the other stuff you can come up with, let me let you respond to that right there. Look, because you said it's interesting. So I'll let you respond.
Yeah, so it's interesting, the idea that, God has this message. If you break my covenant with the day and my covenant with the night, so that there should not be day and night at their appointed time, then my covenant may also be broken with my servant David. And it's almost like God is saying, look, you cannot do this. And so it's almost like he's saying, just as day and night, that just as that can't be changed by you, neither can my covenant with David be broken by you. It's almost like he's saying, I feel. And then you have this instance in the New Testament here where it does demonstrate this darkness coming at a very unusual time, and some people could say that's an eclipse or whatnot, but if you go back to Jeremiah, it almost looks like it's very significant there. And to me, from my perspective, it looks almost like God has said something there like this covenant, this, you speak of the old covenant and the new covenant. Well, it's almost like God is showing that here is a big crack in this old covenant, right? In this first covenant. And there's going to be a renewed covenant happening very soon. That's how I understand that, because it's almost like God has, he's showed, hey, things are changing. Things are going to be a little bit different maybe moving forward. Something like that. That's kind of how it's...
I agree. And then if we also move forward a couple verses, it says in verse 54, so Matthew 27:54, it says, now the centurion, I don't think the centurion was a Jew. Okay, so I'm saying that was probably a Roman.
Yeah.
those who were with him keeping guard over Jesus, when they saw the earthquake and the things that were happening, became frightened and said, truly this was the Son of God. So that's a Gentile even going, oh wow. And then we
Yeah.
can go to verses like Isaiah 9:1, I think, is one spot. And, there's a lot of stuff because ultimately, I believe that God wanted to be known by everyone. And I think that 1 Kings 8:41 to 43, which basically is Solomon's prayer, saying that if someone comes up to you, God, and says, looks towards you and says a prayer, let that prayer be answered. Even an alien or a foreigner, I think is what it's called,
Yeah.
then let that prayer be answered. Now, I don't think Jews were treating Gentiles correctly, and the only one who could was Jesus. That's the only one who can make it clear. No one who comes to me will be rejected. And I think that's John 6:37 or something like that. He's the only one who could have done it. Because if you look at the history of it, Genesis 34:5, that's Jacob's sons, where they had their sister Dinah got raped by the leader of some group that was a group of Gentiles. And they said, oh, you'll be forgiven. Don't worry about it. You just go get circumcised. And then they all went and got circumcised. Meanwhile, they're in recovery. They came in there and they slaughtered all of them. So tell me, you know what I mean? Like there's just something. The only one that was able to do it was Jesus. And it's
Yeah.
really, sometimes I cry, when I think about that, but because the way things happened, but it's,
Yeah, man. It's, I remember my first time reading through the Bible, and I was expecting this really optimistic, happy story about how God loves us and everything's hunky dory, and I was so scared. I was like, "What is happening?" Ugh. But I think it just speaks to the truth of the human experience. Human beings are flawed, and their plans are, even their best plans sometimes fall apart. And
oh yeah.
you know what I mean, man? And it's like, yeah, we need faith. We need to believe in this transcendence because, I'll tell you something. For all the pain and the anguish that we go through in our lives, I mean, you speak about losing a mother. My mum's all I've got left. You know what I mean? My dad passed away. My older brother passed away. I've got a younger brother and my mum. That's my family. And it would I don't mean to swear. It would bother me a lot. I don't know how I'd handle it losing my mum just now. I'm 35 and my mum's just turned 70, and it's a scary idea because I love her so much, and you've been through that. And just on a human level, I mean, I don't want to get into that because that'll make you emotional. It would make me emotional, but
We don't need to go there. Those are, you know what those are?
what's that?
Those are your little pearls or your things that you should keep to yourself. Not
Yeah,
post on, at the very least, post on YouTube. Keep
yeah,
those to
man.
yourself. I shared a little bit, but I didn't share that much. You
Yeah,
know what I
man.
mean?
Yeah,
I can tell the whole story, but I ain't going to because those are mine. Those are my
yeah.
little nuggets that I'm gonna keep to myself.
And
Right?
that's wisdom, man. That's wisdom. I mean, I'm happy that you said that to me because sometimes I overshare. I do, and I'm an open book. I'm very transparent, but
Yeah. Sometimes we are, but that's part of being human too.
yeah, man. Absolutely, absolutely.
I,
So
I I would say if you want to move on to a new topic, which is again because I was trying to bring it up before. If you were finished on the Jeremiah 33 evaluation that you had of that, the little that we went through, if you were
yeah,
finished on that, I'd flip one page and we can talk about something else real quick.
yeah, man. Go for it. Go for it.
All right. So I find it interesting. So the Jewish lineage tree was always of what? The male or the female? The male, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Always. Primarily. You could find a couple of females in there, I think. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think you can find a couple. So if we go to Jeremiah 31:22, it says, "How long will you go here and there, O faithless daughter? For the Lord has created a new thing in the earth. A woman will encompass a man." This is a very tough verse, and I've thought about it for a long time. And then I've come across, right after this, by the way, a couple, verses later, the new covenant is mentioned. So, which also kind of makes my ears perk up a little bit. But then I've ran across situations where people try to knock the Bible down, and they say, "Oh, well, there's there's things that don't make sense. The Bible contradicts itself, blah 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 blah." And then so you're going to go to Matthew, the genealogy of Matthew, and then we can go to the genealogy of Luke. Now, the genealogy of Matthew, I can't really say much about that one, but the genealogy of Luke 3:23. When he began his ministry, Jesus himself was about 30 years of age, being, as was supposed, the son of Joseph. So now Matthew, on the other hand, I think straight says Joseph, son of this and that and that. I believe this is Mary's genealogy. So, and that's not something, it's something that I have looked up on the internet to where other people have said this before. I'm not just pulling it out of my, pulling it out of a random, it's my own interpretation type thing, but Matthew 1, let's see, says, son of David. Okay. Then you have to go down here. Jacob, father of Joseph. Yeah, Jacob was the father. This is Matt 1:16. Jacob was the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, so by whom Jesus was born. So that one kind of leads me to believe that's a Joseph lineage. And the other one says supposed. So I'm wondering what you think about that.
I think, the genealogies, they're fascinating to me. And I think, understanding which line it's coming through. Is this coming through Mary's line, or is this coming through Joseph's line, and what the implications are of that? Those are pretty great. I think I've heard it said that Jesus comes genetically down through, I think I've heard it from both perspectives before, tracing Mary and seeing where she's come from, and tracing Joseph. I think some people have been hesitant about, what it would mean if we look at the Joseph line, and what does that mean in terms of Christ's heritage? Was there this miraculous conception, or was it a more typical conception with some kind of divine thing going on? But the text is very clear that it was, the Immaculate Conception. So I've got no problem with that. I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I believe these types of things can happen miraculously, very special cases. I don't know if I've lent too much thought to it. I think, let's see. I'm just going to give myself another little second here to think about this. So was it from Mary's line or Joseph's line, and what the implications of that would be? So Matthew and Luke. So the Luke genealogy traces Jesus's lineage from a different path than that of Matthew. And it starts from Jesus and it goes back to Adam. And it diverges from Matthew's genealogy after David. So it's interpreted, I think, as a lineage through Mary. even though Joseph's name is used, which is weird. This is just what I'm reading. So in Luke 3, we're getting Mary's lineage, even though the name of Joseph is used. And I don't know why they would do that. So this is just one interpretation. And then in Matthew, we get the lineage through Joseph, who is described as the kind of legal father of Jesus. And so they're doing it that way. And it goes through David and Solomon until it gets to Joseph. That would.
And
I don't know, man.
you
I don't know. You tell me. You tell me.
Oh, no, I mean, and you have a couple of names in there that will be listed in both
Yeah.
that might not make sense. However, I've battled against an Old Testament person. We'll just put it that way. And I see the Matthew lineage, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm kind of stumped. But then I look through the Luke lineage, and they brought up Nathan, and I said, okay, well, Nathan. And then I found there's a prophet in the Old Testament named Nathan, and it might be in Zechariah, I'm not sure, but I brought that up, and then he was like, oh, well, we kind of don't know. So it's kind of interesting. It's something you might want to look at for later. You know what I mean? It's just a point to make to look up for later. That's all. Because it's interesting. We don't need to talk about that all day. That's just stuff to look up for yourself if you're interested. And if you're not, then we don't need to debate about it all day because it really doesn't, to
No, man,
edify
honestly,
to edify, I believe, is to let somebody hear it and then let them go seek it for themselves and then let God speak to them. Like if it's true or not. You know what I'm saying? That's the fun part about it for me. So if you know what I'm saying, right?
yeah, man, I hear you, man. And I think if I go away and think about these things a bit more, like I could probably come up with something juicy for us to sink our teeth into. But I think a good idea for us would be if based on some of the notes I've been taking and my Googling away here, I'll look up some of these concepts. And if you look into Preterism with Don Preston, and then even if we do this again sometime and schedule a time.
I do have something on this that I didn't want to mention outside because I was just outside, and these are old. They're some Old Testament people. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Screen looks like it's whatever. So, can you still hear me?
There's a little bit janky.
You still there?
Yeah, I can hear you vaguely, but it's not coming through totally clear.
Maybe my internet connection's bad. I don't know.
Yeah, that's better now.
You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Oh, okay, well, that's Dubs. Guessing he's still a bit. By the way, I just want to say, guys, it's getting quite late. I'm being polite, and I like to hear people talk and share their views, but I'm crashing out. It's almost 1 a.m. here in Scotland, and I'm back on to normal sleeping hours. So I like the hangout. I like chilling out. I like talking to people, but I'm going to crash out soon. So what I would suggest is Dub, if you're listening, jump onto a Don Preston debate and get a better idea what preterism is, and then we can have a more kind of structured thing. And even if you leave me a comment and say, I want to talk about these things here, go for it. You know what I mean? All right, you're coming back on. There you go. All right, Dub, I was just saying there.
You're wrapping up. I hear you.
Yeah,
so
man,
the only other thing I wanted to add was because if you think about the Matthew genealogy on this, and you go to 2 Samuel 2:10, then that says, 2 Samuel 12:10, excuse me. Now, therefore, the sword shall never depart from your house, because you have despised me and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. So that's speaking of the Bathsheba scenario, right?
Yes.
So then I think that that's part of the reason why it could be anyway, why the Jeremiah 32 situation that we just went over might have taken place. And I find it odd that the Jewish people now, it seems to me from what I've heard, have changed their idea from a maternal situation, from a paternal, the father is the genealogy, to the mother is the genealogy. I find it odd. So that's just another thing to throw like on there to think about, you know.
Yeah, man.
And again,
Yeah.
Nathan, if you look at the Luke 3, Nathan is mentioned in Luke 3, but if you
Yes.
look in the Old Testament, Nathan is mentioned in there. So I just wanted to throw that in there. That's all.
Honestly, man, it is deeply fascinating stuff, and your passion for it comes through so clearly. So, no, I'm glad you found this stream tonight, man. It's really nice to kind of connect with you a bit, and you can just, if you want to continue a conversation, drop a comment in a video. Use this video. We can chat back and forth in the comments, and we can arrange something. You know what I mean? We'll arrange something in the next few days.
Get some sleep, buddy. There's plenty to talk about. I could talk about basically any subject. So it's fascinating to me as well. It was good coming on your show. Thank you very much. I'm going to bounce out and let you get some sleep.
Yeah, my man. Thank you so much, man. Pleasure. An absolute pleasure. All right, there we go. So yeah, I think I'd like to do that. Like some nights every week, guys, just let you jump on. Okay, so I'll post a link, okay, and I'll show you what that looks like again, okay? So anyone who wants to in the future, I just go like this, I press copy, and then into the chat, I just go like this, paste. And then all you would do, guys, is highlight that, post it into your URL, click enter, just follow the prompts, and then you can jump on. And you can just do like dub. You don't have to come on camera. And if you ever do jump on a live stream, I'll take it down if you don't like it. Okay, just send a comment saying, "Hey, let's pull this thing." I said too many. I said too many things I shouldn't have said. But right. Anyways, guys, all the best. God bless, and take it easy. Chat to you again soon.